Dela's Voice has been made possible by the generosity of sponsors like you. Dela's Voice talk show is sponsored by Reflex for Feet. What makes live shows so special is that interaction between the viewer and the host and the guest, whether it's through the chat or the live phone calls. This connection is created because people are allowed to share their experiences, their feelings, their thoughts, and this makes for a beautiful dynamic of energy that's connecting people in so many different ways. And that's how we learn. That's the best way we can help one another, is by connecting at such deep levels. This is Dela Fotoohi, the host of Dela's Voice, hoping to spark your soul. Hello, and welcome to another Dela's Voice Sunday live talk show. It's been a while. Life has been busy. A lot of changes have happened, and I am proud to be back here with you for another fantastic show to bring information, inspiration, motivation for change, wellness, and recovery. I want to take a second and ask you to pat yourself on the back for being so committed to your wellness and for wanting to learn more. It is a great blessing to be aware of what we don't know that we don't know and wanting to learn more. Today, we're going to learn more about dementia through somebody's lived experience, because I believe that those are the best kind of teachings. For someone who's been through something that is willing to sit here and openly share it with us, that's the best way we can learn. Angela is here today. Angela is a friend that I've known for a few months now. And when I put out a poster that, I'm looking for people who can speak on lived experience, caregiving to dementia, she raised her arm and she raised her hand. How do you say that? Raised her arm or raised her hand? Anyways, she volunteered and she said she could talk about that. And I'm so fortunate to have her on the show today. Here's a little bit about Angela's experience. Angela's father was diagnosed with dementia 4 years ago, and he's been living with Angela and her family for the past 6 years. Angela today is here to share her experiences as a caregiver with adjusting to the many challenges, the sacrifices she had to make, and also her family. And she's still continuing to make those sacrifices, and she's learning throughout. The things we'll be talking about today are exactly those experiences, her story with caregiving to her dad, who's living with dementia, specifically Lewy Body Dementia, um, the diagnosis, the pre-diagnosis, the signs, the symptoms, um, the challenges that came with those changes in life, the driving, the confabulations, the dealing with the reverse roles of who's a parent now, the guilt, the boundaries, and the joys. And that's what this is all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce on Dela's Voice today, Angela Trevivian. Hello.
Hi, Dela.
Hi. Thank you for being here, Angela.
Oh,
So
it's my
nice to meet
pleasure.
you. I want to thank you for volunteering to do this and accepting my invitation to be on the show. It takes a lot of courage to share our stories. Uh, do you believe that by sharing our stories, we can help one another?
Yes, absolutely. That's what's helped me is being part of other people's stories. So definitely helpful.
I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to talk about this and we're going to learn so much from you. But first of all, I want to take a moment and say hello to our viewers who are with us. And I want to ask you, our viewer, to please share this talk with someone who you think might benefit from this, someone who's also caregiving to a parent. And who knows? Sometimes the help we need, the inspiration we need can come from the least likely places. And so by you sharing this, you might help someone today. Some of our viewers who are here today have left us messages. I want to make sure I say hello to them all. It's so nice to have you back here with me. I mean, I've been gone for a while, so I'm just coming back after a bit of an absence. So here we go. We're going to get started. I'm going to put this banner up so that people can see what we're talking about as they're coming on. And I also want to say thank you to Reflex for Feet for sponsoring today's show. And throughout the show, we'll be taking phone calls, and I'll be posting that phone number very soon when it's time to call. So, Angela, let's get started.
Okay, sounds
All
good.
right. Okay. So, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about you and the type of family dynamics you have? Um, I know you have kids and you have a busy family life. So, tell us a little bit about that and how was it that your dad started living with you?
Okay, so yes, I'm married. It's a uh, second marriage for us. I have one daughter. My husband has three children. We've been together for almost 20 years. So the kids were quite small. So four kids. It was very busy. So they're all grown now and doing their own things, finishing up university, finished university, that kind of thing. So it's just my husband and I. And then a few years ago, my parents decided to split up. And so my dad came to live with us. We have this great, really nice two-bedroom apartment over the top of our garage. And yeah, so he came to be staying with us. So we went from looking after kids to looking after parents.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And then so obviously like you had to pivot some things around, you had to make some changes to adjust to living with your dad again.
Yes.
I mean, that can't be easy because
No.
Carl, he's always forever a dad, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's like we did have to so when he first moved in, my obviously 6 years ago, so the kids were still here. So we had to sort of say this side is ours, and if you want to come over, you have to knock or yell hello, and you're not to go upstairs because one time he thought one of the kids was out, and he went and knocked on one of the girls' doors. Ah, granddad, get out! So we had to roll everything back and sort of make sure everybody understood their boundaries, but it's worked out though for
Man,
that. Yeah.
that word boundaries, Angela, if we could learn to set boundaries from get-go, I mean, our
Mhm.
lives could be so much easier, couldn't they?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And the thing is, a lot of stuff though is that you don't know you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know you may need a boundary here or here, right?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I mean, growing up, I nobody ever taught me to set boundaries, honestly. It wasn't part of the school curriculum,
Mhm.
boundary setting. That would
That's
have been
right.
nice.
Yeah, yeah. And not being afraid to sort of say where your comfort begins and ends, right? We tend to like want to be polite and nice and, you know.
Sure.
Mhm.
So your dad starts living with you,
Mhm.
and then a couple of years later is when he was diagnosed with dementia?
Mhm. So when he first started living with us, um we started noticing like little things. Some forgetfulness, some sort of strange storytelling, and a shuffling gait. So when he would walk, he would shuffle his feet and not move his arms very much when he walked. So of course, you put a lot of that down to like, well, he's older and maybe it's age-related memory loss. And so, and my dad was always an intelligent person, so I think they have very good coping strategies and covering strategies. So by the time he was diagnosed, um, it was quite shocking how far along the illness actually was, because he'd been able to sort of cope. And I think a bit of denial on our part, on his part. What's age related change? What is not age related change? So when I look back now, even after I've read a lot about it and listened to podcasts and different things, I think his symptoms probably started about 8 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I would say if anybody has an older parent that you're even a little bit maybe like about, I think it's well worth your effort to get tested because the original test is really easy. It's just a mini mental exam in the doctor's office. But a lot of people, I think they don't want to know. They don't know how easy it is, and their
And
parents are
denial,
lucky.
right?
And denial, right? And like I said, and just not knowing, like, what is age-related change? Like,
Mm.
everybody forgets something sometimes, right? Like,
Mm,
I've forgotten my keys, I've forgotten an appointment,
mhm.
right? But that's when you realize what a dementia patient is like, it's very, very different.
So
Forgetfulness.
what is it like if I were to say, okay, if I forget this is okay, but when do I get worried?
So it's when you can't, um, it's when you're forgetting like all the time and things that would really come easily to you. So with my dad, for example, he loves to drive. Loves to drive. It's like his happy place. He likes to just go for a drive, look around, right? He recently got a new car and there's a whole driving story. He is allowed to drive right now. There's a whole story there. Um, but so he recently got a new car. Well, he can't remember how to start it some days.
Mm,
He can't figure out the dashboard anymore, right?
mhm,
Now, myself, I might get a new car and a couple times be like, "Oh, how do I fix the radio again? Oh, how do I change the 24-hour clock, right? When it's daylight savings, I got to get the book out again." But he'll forget the same thing every day. So
mm.
he's not really learning anything new is where I find the dementia comes in. Yeah.
Ah, so, what else? What else did you notice?
Something called aphasia. So aphasia is the inability to find words. So, and that is prevalent as you get older as well. But usually you eventually come up with the word, right? So I went to that big place, Green Park, right? Um, he will be big place, green, we went there, right? So he'll never come up with the word, or he might come up with the wrong word. right? Something close, but not quite the same. Um, so that's a big one. So the word finding is very
Mhm.
prevalent, I find. Yeah. Mhm.
Um, what about things like cooking and things like that? Like things that are um, probably less demanding of the mind, but more of a skill.
Yeah. So you tend to keep old parts of your memory at the beginning of your dementia journey. So anything sort of like before 20 years ago is in there not bad. So dad has no problem getting himself cereal in the morning. He can write a grocery list, right? And go to the store. He can make lunch. He does tend to make the same thing every day. But he can do that because that's still old skills. You've been making breakfast your whole life, right?
Mhm,
He can make himself a cup of tea. He's been making that his whole life.
mhm,
If I came in and said, "Oh, dad, can you throw together a salad?" That would probably throw him off. That's not something he would normally do.
mhm,
He wouldn't know where to start.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Um, so let me just have a look at the comment section just to make sure everybody's okay here. Um, when hmm, I think Majon also has some experience with dementia. She's put a comment that when they don't know if it's day or night. Is that
Mm.
something that you've noticed?
Um, we have not got there yet. We do have a lot of confusion around what day it actually is. Um, and and maybe what time it is. And also like, did I already get the mail today? Right? So we may not remember the morning by the time the evening comes.
Mhm.
But no, I haven't experienced the mixing up though.
Mhm, mhm. I guess, this is where the different types of dementia, and maybe we should talk about that a little bit. I know that you have done a lot of research, and so can you tell us a little bit about, the different types of dementia?
Yeah, so dementia is really like an umbrella term for several different types of dementia. So there's vascular dementia, which is when there's like hardening of the arteries and you're having like little mini strokes all the time. And each time you have one of those mini strokes that may be indetectable, not necessarily with the drooping face or anything like that, that takes out that piece of the brain, right? So for vascular dementia, it can happen anywhere in the brain, so you don't know what is going to be affected. So a lot of if you had a history of smoking, diabetes, high cholesterol, much greater risk for vascular dementia. Then there's Parkinsonian dementia. So people that have Parkinson's develop a typical type of dementia with the Parkinson's. And then the Parkinsonian features are often in other types of dementia as well, especially in Lewy body. So there's also Alzheimer dementia, which is the most common dementia.
Mm,
Um, and then lastly, there's Lewy body dementia. And the hallmark of Lewy body dementia is fluctuations. So Alzheimer's tends to be a slow, gradual decline over time. Lewy body is one day, you might not think anything's wrong, the next day it's terrible. So the fluctuations are definitely the hallmark of that. Also, Lewy body does share some characteristics with the Parkinson's dementia in the shuffling gait, so that shuffling feet, and the not moving your arms as much when you walk. And it's interesting, Lewy body dementia is actually the second most prevalent dementia, but you think like most people haven't heard of it. But in the US, 5.8 million Americans presently have Alzheimer dementia. 1.4 million have Lewy body. So even though it's second, it's still a big difference between
yeah,
Alzheimer's and Lewy body
yeah.
dementia. Yeah.
And since you're mentioning that, I have to say that, you know what? I mean, we say somebody has Alzheimer's and then somebody has dementia. I never knew that they were under the same umbrella, and
Hmm.
so I'm so glad to know that now. And there's another type of dementia.
Oh, I think you've frozen. I can't hear you or see you.
Internet is down. We're working on it. And we're back.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for everybody who stayed tuned. Oh, our internet went down completely, and so sorry about that. Anyway, so let's pick up where we left off.
Okay.
I love this. We were talking about a type of dementia that's called frontal temporal lobe,
Low
right? So
dementia.
FTL.
Yeah.
And so, do you know anything about that type?
A little bit. It's similar to more of like the Alzheimer, Lewy body type of dementia, but it does just affect that one area of the brain, which is the area of the brain a lot to do with your executive functioning, so ability to plan, be logical, um, uh, and do things in an orderly manner or organize things into an orderly manner. And that just tends to stay in that one part of the brain. Whereas the other types of dementia can go anywhere in the brain. So, Lewy body is a certain type of protein that attaches to the neurons that are called Lewy bodies. And Alzheimer is a type of amylase plaque that attaches to the neurons.
It's
So,
amazing how much you know about this.
thanks. So some people say, well, what's the difference? Dementia. What are you going to do? But there are some important factors with that. So for Lewy body dementia in particular, you want to have that diagnosis for sure because as they go along on their dementia journey, a lot of dementia patients get hostile or restless and they can't sleep. If you bring a Lewy body dementia patient to the hospital, and a lot of doctors don't know this, they cannot be given antipsychotics. It will make them way worse.
Mm.
And this
Mm.
is something that is very not well known. So
Well, you're
that's why
saying
you
the
really wanna
doctors
get that.
don't know this?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Emergency doctors, family physicians often, the geriatricians, that type of thing, they do, but you're not likely to run into a geriatrician if it's the middle of the night, you can't get your loved one to settle down, you're going to emerge. They may not know that.
Um,
So that's
s
really important
s
distinction to have.
right, so I mean, can you imagine if you give someone who can't tolerate antipsychotics and they'll get worse.
Mhm.
So it's so important for us to advocate for our loved ones. And
Yes.
what you mentioned, it's so incredibly important to educate ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, h-
Mhm.
so how, so how is it you found this out, Angela?
Research and
Research.
reading papers yeah, I also belong to a great group, an Alzheimer support group. And we meet one Thursday-ish a month. So I learn a lot from them and their lived experience. And I also took a caregiver's course through the Alzheimer's Society, which was immensely educational and helpful as well. So I wanted to have as many tools in my toolbox as I can. And I wanted to be prepared for this. I don't want to put my head in the sand. Like, I know now what's coming down the road for me. So I feel it's not as scary now because I know what to expect and I know what to do.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to go back to when you noticed that your dad was going through these changes. How did you get him to say, "Okay, let's go for testing"? Because I would think that's a part of this whole experience is the denial and not wanting to admit that there's a problem, and people often get stuck there.
Hmm. So for us, he had a little bit of a funny episode where he had some like garbled speech for a few seconds, and it
Frozen.
scared us.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I know. Yeah, okay. So we had this garbled speech for a few seconds, and so that kind of like scared him a little bit. So I said, "Let's get you checked out at the stroke clinic," which at South Lake was a fantastic experience. We went through really quickly, and with that stroke protocol, they do a sort of like this part of the dementia sort of mini mental exam, and he didn't do very well on that. Was not a stroke. They kind of punt you back to your family doctor. And then it's funny, even though that happened and they punt you back and with all the information, I still had to ask the family doctor for the dementia test. But my dad was open to it at that time because he'd had this sort of scary episode.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
So you had to ask for it, and
Yeah.
that's something that's really important to know that we can ask for it, like,
Mhm.
yeah.
And the thing is too, like, so my dad cannot go to any appointments on his own anymore because he won't remember afterwards, right? But I've witnessed when I do go to the doctors with him, the dementia patient can really hold it together for like the 10-15 minutes you're in the doctor's office, right? So you really have to have a good relationship with that family doctor to say, like, nah, this is not what's
That
happening
it's
at
no,
home.
this is not real.
Yeah, because in the family doctor's point of view, "Oh, he doesn't seem that bad to me,"
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then the first time we did the full test with the geriatrician, I mean, it was quite shocking actually how far along he was. But you really have to advocate. You have to advocate for your loved one, like every step of the way.
Doing that test, doing that assessment was a real eye opener, and
Mhm.
so what were some of the questions on the test, if you remember?
Oh yeah, sure. So they'll ask you at the beginning of the test to remember 5 words. They're going to tell you 5 words like flower, velvet, house, whatever. And they say, then we're going to go through the test and you're going to repeat those words back to me. So that's one part of it. And my dad did not too bad. I think he got 2 out of the 5 at the end. There's some counting backwards. But the shocker was you draw a clock. So they want you to draw a circle, put the numbers in it, and then they want you to do the time as 10 past 11. So my dad drew the circle. He drew the numbers of the clock all on one side of the clock, and then he drew the hands of the clock outside of the circle.
Oh.
Wow, mind blown, right? Just unbelievable. Like, and apparently it's interesting. So then the driving thing comes into play, right? So, um, so then this is part of one of the driving tests is to do this clock, right? And I was like, well, can't you just go away and practice? Right? Like that's what I would do, right? And apparently, no. Apparently, if that part of your brain isn't functioning, no matter how many times you do it, it will not come back to you.
It's not coming. It's really interesting how our minds work, but you're saying there's a protein buildup. This protein is what's, really it's like it's clogging the parts of the brain that's responsible for certain,
For
um
for firing the message. So you have 2 neurons,
mhm,
and in between the neurons, you have a synapse, right?
mhm,
So these, amylase plaques in Alzheimer's and Lewy bodies kind of, like, wrap around that synapse. So
mhm.
the message isn't firing
There's
anymore,
no
right?
messaging, and
Yeah.
there's nothing that can be done to kind of remove that plaque.
Nothing can be done to remove the plaques that are already there. However, I feel we've had some success with a medication my dad's on now called memantine. And the idea of that is it's going to decrease the decline. So we're not going to slide quite so quickly.
Mhm,
I definitely think it makes a difference. It also has a mood boosting effect. So if your loved one is feeling kind of down, because, like, I mean, who wouldn't? If you know this is happening to you, right? And it's so frustrating. I found when my dad was feeling low, his dementia was worse. So with the memantine, there is a little bit of a mood boosting effect, which then you're more willing to be social, which is, that's more stimulation. You're more willing to go out and do things. Again, more stimulation, and more willing to sort of like do your self care and eat properly and all of that. And plus, you just feel better, right? So is there anything that takes it away? Is there anything that stops it? I know there is some research in the States right now, about some promising new medications. One of them is a nasal spray. But right now, the best we can do is slow it down.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
It's really tough to see someone you love so much, deteriorating, and I know that that has had some effect on you, as a caregiver. How do you take care of yourself, Angela? That's really important for our viewers who are in the same shoes, maybe like experiencing something similar, because we can get so drained and that we forget all about ourselves. And so, what are some things that you do to keep yourself looking so pretty and happy and feeling good and being actually there for your husband and for your children, right? But also being there for you.
Yeah.
That's that's really important.
Yeah. So I'm very firm about my exercise schedule. I walk every day in nature, every single day for at least an hour. And sometimes I go with a friend, sometimes I go by myself, but that's really important to me, that hour in nature. And if I have to get up earlier to get it, I do whatever I need to do. And I like it before my day starts. I like to know that that's taken care of before my day starts. I also, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling really busy, I do little things like I order my groceries online. You know what? It's an extra $5. I don't care. That sort of like helps me out. You know what I mean? So I'm not so burned out. I do a lot of batch cooking, right? So I'm not cooking every single day.
Right.
And I have great friends. I have great friends. I have a good social network. And for me, also, I like to be in control. So for me, educating myself about this, to know what's coming, to know what is in place for me down the road has been a huge lift for me rather than at the start. I was more like, oh, like, what is this? What's going to happen? And it can be really scary if you watch a lot of things about dementia, if you talk to a lot of people. You tend to only get the worst of it.
Mm.
And day to day, it's for me right now, and I know it's going to change. It's not that bad, and I try to remember that. It's not that bad right now. So.
You said that, if yeah, sometimes, well, if we don't know, if we don't have a lot of information, we watch what's happening to so and so, or, we watch a movie and, you know, we get so scared. And
Hmm.
you're so right. And in the beginning, you talked about belonging to this support group, and there's a lot of people on there who are experiencing the same thing. And you touched a little bit on that. I know, and the importance of having a support group.
Hmm.
Um, what can you say about that to someone who's watching this and perhaps is a little hesitant joining a group like this? What can you say to help them?
So for me, I found it helpful on different levels. First of all, super accepting group, right? Lovely people. Interestingly, it's usually women that are the caregivers for husbands and parents. So it is mostly women. Um, so hugely supportive, and also so hugely supportive emotionally. Sorry, I'm jumping all over, but also lots of little neat tips. So, for example, we recently took my dad on an Alaskan cruise. It was something he wanted to do for his 80th birthday last year, but of course, COVID. So we went this year. So I approached my group and I said, I'm going to be traveling with my dad. Any tips? So, a great tip was that Air Canada, part of the Disabilities Act of Canada, will reimburse your flight as the caregiver because this person can't travel alone.
No
So,
way.
yeah, so that was a nice savings,
Yes.
right?
Air Canada
That
is
was
not going to
awesome.
like you for saying
Yeah,
this.
really. And it was actually they were very nice, Air Canada. It was a very easy process.
Mm,
Refunded the cost of my ticket because he can't travel alone. So that was a awesome, just a practical
amazing.
tip, right?
Yes.
Another really good tip I learned was if you're going to be traveling with your loved one, um, they get more confused, which we found a huge amount of confusion on this last trip. Um, and you don't want to say to everybody, to the stewardess, to the guy at the cabin, wherever, oh, my dad has dementia in front of him all the time. It's embarrassing and it's hurtful, right? So I have these little cards. They're about the size of a business card. And it just says on it, the person I am with is suffering from dementia. Please be patient and kind. And you just quietly slip it into their passport with their ticket, or you just pull someone aside and give it to them. No embarrassing moment. Everybody, it's wonderful. And use that when you go to an appointment where they're not familiar with him,
Wow.
right? Or anything. What a game changer, right? So lots of little tips like that I found hugely helpful of people that have maybe experienced that, right?
Amazing.
Hmm.
Does your dad ever get impatient with you and say things that hurt you? What a question.
um uh no. Um, so when he's having a really bad day, he can be hard to be around, because he's so angry and bitter, and everything makes him angry, and he can be kind of nasty, not to me, um, but about everything, and that can be kind of hard to be around. So those days I have to be call the day short. For my own sort of self-preservation, right? I have to
Mhm,
be like, "Well, I gotta go do this, Dad, tonight. Time for you to
mhm,
go to your
mhm.
place. You need a good night's sleep tonight."
That and I can imagine, that being tough for someone who's going through, something as devastating as dementia. I mean, you're
Mhm.
losing a part of yourself basically, and it's like almost you're watching yourself lose a part of yourself, and there's nothing you can do
Absolutely.
about it.
Mhm.
So depressive symptoms and low moods, it's just so understandable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine what it must be like. And I think the phase that he's in right now is probably almost the cruelest phase, because you're aware that you're losing your memory. You can't really do anything about it. You can't function enough to sort of get yourself organized. Um, so it's this constant thing that you're aware of all the time, right? Whereas I think further along, you kind of forget it completely that you have this, you're kind of just in it. I think in a way that might almost be kinder. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm, 'cause you
Mhm.
don't know what's
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
And so I wanna come back to that and, ask you, about, you belong to this support group. Obviously, people, are at different stages, in
Mhm.
this journey, and they've probably told you what you can expect, from this. But I wanna read something from Deborah, and, Deborah said she used to be a nurse, Deborah, and, she says she was in charge of a large memory care unit, so she totally understands the
Mm,
hardship
mhm.
and the sacrifices because she's met a lot of people, who are, taking care of people with, memory loss. Deborah also says, FYI, with any, patients that are dealing with memory issues under dementia, Alzheimer's umbrella, it's very important to meet them where they are. On
Mhm.
the other hand, with, TBI patients,
Traumatic brain injury.
thank you. Thank you, Angela. I don't know what she's giving me these, abbreviations that she thinks I should know, but I obviously my guest knows. On the other hand, with, you said traumatic brain injury,
Mhm.
patients, we want to bring them into present place, day, and
Yes.
time.
Yes, I know exactly what she's saying there. So, um, at first, we would try to say, "Correct my dad," or, um, "I thought he could learn," say, so if he was trying to word find and maybe was saying, "What's that thing? What's that thing?" And it was a let's say it was a fork, and I'd say, "Well, come over to the drawer, look at the drawer, like, what is this?" You know what I mean? And try to, like I thought I was helping him to improve his memory,
Like you were trying to stimulate him.
right? But no, you meet them where they are. Tell him fork. It's just frustrating for him. You know what I mean? Don't give him that frustration, right?
Mhm.
Um, he wants to tell stories that sometimes are completely not true, or a confabulation, which is different than a hallucination or a delusion,
Oh, yeah, I wanna hear about
right?
that too.
um,
Yeah.
and um, and you just go along with it. At first, I would sort of challenge it a little bit, or question it, or uh, that type of thing, you know what I mean? But now I don't. Now I go along with it. And exactly, I meet him where he's at. And
Mhm.
my understanding is eventually, part of the disease process for many people is they believe they're in 1942 or whatever, right? And they're telling you something about then, rather than saying, "No, no, dad, you're here with me." You're going to be like, "Oh, tell me more about that." Right?
Oh,
So I
yeah.
love that I'm prepared, right?
Oh, that takes
Mhm.
so much compassion and so much patience. And, that makes total sense to me, because with, traumatic brain injury, like, people who have had strokes and, they're trying to get better.
Right.
They're gonna get better, right? So,
Mhm,
yes, that
mhm.
kind of a stimulation will help them. But for someone with dementia, you know that this isn't going to get better, and
Right.
why add to the frustration, right?
Exactly.
And to the
Exactly right.
feelings of, um yeah,
Inadequacy,
yes,
embarrassment, everything. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Deborah says, "God bless you, Angela." in so many ways.
Ah,
And
sweet.
when we
Thank
know
you.
better, we know better.
That's
You're
right.
helping so many people with your story, she says, and I truly agree with that. Okay, so going back to some of the things that you have experienced, you had mentioned confabulation. Let's talk about that a little bit. What is that exact?
Yeah. So what a fabulous word, right?
I know, I love it too.
Right?
It almost sounds fun.
I know, right? Let's confabulate. Um, yeah. So many so that's sort of a hallmark of Lewy body dementia as well is hallucinations and delusions. So, a hallucination and delusion is sort of seeing something that's not there. So, a common one would be sometimes if you have a black carpet or a rug on the floor, they might think it's a hole, right? Or they might think there's snakes on the carpet if it's patterned. So, that would be kind of a hallucination. They also might think that you're stealing from them or you're up to no good. Like these are kind of hallucinations. So my dad has not had that, but he has what's called confabulations. So that's when you take a little bit of a story and you just take it out of all context. So my dad has a very consistent one. It probably tells this story 2 or 3 times a week. So he's driving and someone's speeding past him and the police are there and the police pull my dad over and they pull the driver over and they get my dad and the driver out of the car and they tell my dad what a good driver and what a good citizen he is and why doesn't he come over and tell this driver how dangerous it is to drive like that and he should drive like you and like carry on good citizen right and that they throw the book at this speeder and all this. So what I've learned through my support group is probably he saw someone speeding, he might have even seen the police, right? But the rest, their mind just goes on this journey. They totally believe this. And there's like that same story, slight variations on it, but basically the same story. And yeah, 2 or 3 times a week. And so now I
And
just know, I just kind of go, oh wow, oh my goodness, aren't people irresponsible to speed? And that's how we handle it now.
I
That's
wanna know
the
what you did
confabulation.
the very first time you heard that story, what did you think?
Well, the first time, I was scared, right? I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's getting pulled over by the police," and my thinking was like, "He's telling me the story, but it's not true. Something bad happened." um, with the police and all this kind of stuff. So actually, after the first time, I got him registered with the York Region Police for the vulnerable persons sector. So that way, if he is pulled over and something happens, they pull him up, they know to call me,
Okay,
right?
so
And
here's another tip,
another tip, yes.
another tip, and you don't need that person's consent to do
No,
this?
no, you go to the York Police website. It's there how to look after a vulnerable person. You send in your picture, you fill out a form, their description, what they answer to, where they should be, where and for them to call you. So that's what I did after that because I thought if he is getting pulled over,
Mhm,
because driving is a big issue, right?
mhm,
Then at least that I know that they will call me, right?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Any concerns about his driving?
So definitely, my biggest concern is he's going to get mixed up and like run a red light when he thinks it's green, that kind of thing. So this is another thing where you have to advocate. So nobody wants to touch the driving. The geriatrician doesn't want to be the mean guy that takes his license. The family doctor doesn't want to be the mean guy that takes their license. So, dad, of course, I feel would probably go downhill faster if he didn't have this little bit of independence. So what we did is we went to something called Skill Builders, and Skill Builders is a company who made up of nurses, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and they take anybody with any kind of memory issue, traumatic brain injury, physical disability, and they test your driving. and they test your speed time, your reaction time, how well you're understanding the traffic, and then they drive with you for 45 minutes, and then they give you a recommendation of what they think this person should be allowed to do. So rather than just somebody taking his license, my dad is allowed to keep his car, but he's allowed to drive around Newmarket and Aurora only. No highways, no night driving,
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. So that was like the perfect mix, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's another thing you kind of now you have to pay for that out of your own pocket, but for me, totally worth it,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
That's
And
so.
so skill builders, is it for anyone or is it just
Oh yeah.
for, a population?
It's for anyone, yeah, but
Okay.
they specialize sort of with dementia, brain injury,
Yes.
physical, somebody who's now in a wheelchair and has to learn to drive with their hands only.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's where they could go for that training, that
Amazing.
skill.
And
Yeah.
and it takes so it does take a certain amount of pressure off of you because
Mm,
you don't wanna be the one saying, "Well, dad, you can't drive anymore," right?
exactly.
Okay, and so
Exactly.
he knows that. So how often do you have to go to this, skill builders and do this?
Well, what I thought is so in Canada, you have to be assessed for your driver's license every 2 years over 80. So, um, with COVID, he kind of got a free 2 years. So when he turns 82, they will retest him at that time, and I'll see where we're at then.
Mhm.
But for driving just around town and all that, he's good. He's a very slow, careful driver, so um, pretty good, I think, so far.
Good, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I can imagine what a devastation that would be for someone to lose that independence.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very hard.
Hmm.
Um, you talked about, some sacrifices that you've had to make,
Hmm.
and I can only imagine. W what would you say, like, some of the top sacrifices you have to make on a daily basis to take care of your
um,
dad?
So my dad comes for dinner every night, right? So, like I said, we went from having kids for dinner every night to now having a parent at dinner every night. So it is a sacrifice on my marriage, right? Like it's different than just being the two of us at this
Yeah,
time of our life, right? We're in our 50s. And so that's definitely a sacrifice. Things like if we want to go away, my husband and I, we have to make arrangements, right? So my sister's usually great. She will come and stay at our place, or at least stay at our place like a few nights. But it's always a consideration, right? Like how long can we go for? Can somebody help us?
yeah,
That kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a couple of sacrifices, and then it's a lot on your time, right? Like um, so he does a shift every week at the hospital as a volunteer.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
there's Thursday afternoon, he volunteers in the cardiac unit, yeah, which is awesome. But the hospital sends out a certain amount of emails, and so he doesn't understand a lot of them, right? So that's just one example. But every day I'm sort of like, okay, well, let's go over your emails. Let's do this. Let's sort out your medications. Another tip, blister packs. Have a great pharmacist on your team as well. Blister packs are a huge time saver. So they're little packets that the pharmacist will make up for day and night with their medications. You just have to pop it open. You don't have to like have 80 bottles and you're doing the weekly thing yourself. You can get a month at a time. So a good pharmacist on your team is a great help. But yeah, I look after all his finances, all his medical, his medications, his vitamins, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's time every day. Every day
A
I have
lot.
to make
It's a
time for that.
lot.
Yeah.
Imagine says, "The most important thing I've heard is to have is you have to get a power of attorney from a lawyer at the early stages of dementia."
Mhm, mhm. So that is very helpful, definitely. Yes, we have power of attorney and things also like my dad has a property in Florida. So we had to get power of attorney for if we want to at some point sell that. that kind of thing. And for me to be able to do his banking, I had to, so you get power of attorney, and then don't think, oh, I have power of attorney, I'm just going to show up and show that form. No, you're going to go to the bank, and that's a whole process. So they have their own lawyers look at your power of attorney. So you kind of want to be able to be the financial decision maker before they're not really able to make decisions
Right.
anymore. And that went really quickly, I found. Dad went from understanding money to has no idea how to work a credit card now, like almost overnight, that one. So being the person for the banking, registered with your bank that you are the power of attorney for his accounts, that's really important too. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
So, yes, so thanks for mentioning that.
Hmm.
Also, that, I mean, it's kind of hard to get that power of attorney agreed to, right? From someone who has been independent and on their own, and how do you get them to agree?
Well, for my dad, I th- so we kind of worded it at the first sort of like, well, we think it's just wise that, now that you and mom aren't together, you know what I mean? Somebody should be responsible if something happens, and you know what I mean? So why don't you leave it to my sister and I? And he was agreeable to that. We're a
Mhm.
pretty close family, so it's not like he thought we were gonna rip him off.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think he knew he wasn't able to really keep track of the finances
yeah.
anymore and understanding the banking, and of course, everything's online now, and that's very confusing to him, right? So I think he was kind of relieved, a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mhm.
Deborah's asking, how's dad's overall physical health?
Oh, really good actually. He's really strong physically. So bit of a high cholesterol problem. He's teetering on the sort of pre-diabetic. You know what I mean? He likes his Tim Hortons coffee and a muffin every day.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. So, but good. He gets up every morning and he waters. We live on quite a large property and we have quite a few gardens. He gets up every morning and waters all the yards and everything. He can't walk as far as he used to, so the watering's nice. It's kind of walk a little bit and stand, walk a little bit and stand.
Mhm.
But yeah, quite healthy. Otherwise, no blood pressure medications, no cardiac issues. Some bit of arthritis in his back, that kind of thing. But yeah, overall, physically pretty robust. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that, and I wish
Hmm.
him lots of many years of, health, Angela.
Yes, thank
Uh,
you.
so you do, reflexology. That's what you
Hmm.
do. That's your profession and
Yes,
passion. I can say
yes,
that because I know that you're very passionate about that. And I
yes.
want to talk a little bit about that for people who don't know what reflexology is. Would you
Okay.
explain, please?
Yeah. So on the bottom of your foot, there's over 7,000 nerve endings. And each of those nerve endings have reflexes that are associated with other parts in your body. So, an organ, gland, hormone, um, muscle, tissue, everything. And by sort of like putting pressure in certain areas on your feet, we can stimulate those areas. So, definitely amazing if you have a lot of stress and anxiety, really can pull up your parasympathetic system. We, especially in southwestern Ontario, tend to live in our autonomic system. So, like cat on a screen, right?
Right.
And we forget how to tap into that parasympathetic system.
Mhm.
Regular reflexology treatments will really remind your body, like, oh, yeah, I like this place. This is good. And then you have tips to like help you fall asleep better, to just get into that like calming way a lot faster than you can do when you're in this like, oh, stressed, busy type of environment. And then there's also a more sort of practical physical application. So I'm a kinesiologist by degree. So I take my kinesiology and the reflexology, and I work with athletes as well for plantar fasciitis, tendinopathy, strained sprains and painful feet, that kind of thing. So I kind of come at it from two approaches. So a really relaxation, detoxification, improving circulation, just get you back to homeostasis. And then also, I have sort of a more practical a side of my practice where I'm also giving you exercises to take home and that kind of thing.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
The way I envision it is like this. All these nerve endings at the bottom of your feet, right? And you're a
Hmm.
reflexologist, and so you're like that computer resetter. You take you take the
Yeah.
foot. So imagine like that's a control switchboard of your entire body, and all you. So once you go to see a reflexologist, they get to reset and reboot and kind of
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
that
it's so good. And the first time, so I used to do triathlons, and my feet always hurt, and I had plantar fasciitis for years, and I tried orthotics and shockwave therapy and chiropractic. Like I ran the gamut. And I worked at the hospital. I was a vascular ultrasound tech at the hospital, and somebody said to me, "Why don't you try reflexology?" And I said, "That sounds like a made up word." It's like, you can't just put ology at the end of something and it's a thing, right? And they're like, "What have you got to lose?" And I'm like, "You know what? You're right." So I went. My plantar fasciitis is gone, not immediately. It took a while, you know what I mean? And now I go every month religiously. I feel like I sleep better. I feel better. Like, I am totally a believer. I love it. And I retired from healthcare for working in ultrasound for over 20 years, and went back, took my certification for this, and I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. I love it. I
you love
love
it. I
it.
can tell you love it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love being back hands-on patient care because I went and got my master's for a while, and I drifted into management. Not for me. I like being with my patients. I like
yeah,
being with people.
you
Yeah.
like healing people, don't
Yes.
you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Deborah
Definitely.
says, "Does it help also with nerve pain post-surgery?"
Yes, absolutely. So, definitely reflexology, and it can be either on the face or the feet, and will help nerve pain by increasing your endorphins, your serotonin, and pain receptors. Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
Perfect. Look at that. Um, so if someone wants to get in touch with you, Angela, whether it's to book a consultation with you or an appointment with you, where's the best place they can go to?
So the best place is probably, if you want to book an appointment with me, is our website, which is www.newmarketnaturopath.com. And you just click on reflexology and my calendar will come up. I also, if you want to learn more about reflexology, I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. Both are at reflex for feet, all one word. Lots of information through there. I put up all the time videos. I put silly ones up on Instagram too, just for fun. And but there's a lot of information on there as well.
So that's www.newmarketnaturopath.com.
That's it. Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then your Instagram and Facebook handle are just scrolling at the bottom at Reflex for Feet. That's not a
Yes.
made up word. Reflex for Feet with Angela Trevivian. Angela, thank you so much for being on here today. I wonder if you can give us some finishing thoughts about this, what we talked about today.
Um, so I would say, try not to look so far into the future with your dementia and that journey. I would say take one day at a time. And I know that seems like really simple advice, but it really is true. Especially with Lewy body dementia, you cannot predict what is going to be the next day. So all your planning and all your planning ahead could be totally wrong for what's going to happen the next day. So I really take everything one day at a time. Like, that is my best advice, and just love them and care for them and be respectful, and listen and let them talk, and just nod and smile, and just be kind.
That's it.
Hmm.
One day at a time. I like that. One day at a time.
Hmm.
Deborah says, be present in the present.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Mhm.
That helps with so much too, right?
Right? Yes. And I think when you're younger, you have a little bit of trouble with that, right? You're like, ah, but I'd say something with getting older that is a gift is that ability to slow down and be in the present more. That is something I did not have when I was younger that I'm getting much better at and more appreciative of as I get older. Mhm.
Angela, you're a gift. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your story on here. You've helped so many people, and I'm sure many more will benefit from watching this show. You've given us so much gold, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I want to wish you the very best in your endeavors, and I wonder if you would come back and talk about parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous
Yeah,
system and
absolutely.
how
Yes,
that
definitely. I would
plays.
love to.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be awesome. So to help
Yeah.
us in combating some of the stress that we
Yeah,
go through, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much. For everyone who's watched this show, please reach out to Angela at www.newmarketnaturopath.com, or you can visit her site on Facebook and Instagram at Reflects for Feet. And if you have any questions, drop a line here under the show, and I'll be sure to get you the answer you need. If there's any specific topic you want to speak on or you want to hear on, let me know and I'll find the right person who can bring it to us. So, thank you again, Angela, for
Oh,
giving
thank
us
you.
your
This was
time and for
a pleasure.
everyone. Yeah. And
Yeah.
is there anything else you'd like to add, Angela?
Oh, no, just I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It's my first time doing something like this. This was
Well,
a lot of fun. You made it easy.
oh, thank you. It's not gonna be your last time, I promise you. You're so good at this. Pretty soon, Angela's gonna call me, "Della, I'm starting my own show." You'd be really good at it. It's awesome. Thank you
Ah,
so much for being on
ah.
here, and thank you everybody who's watched this show. So happy to be back on here with you. I wish you the very best Sunday and enjoy. Happy 4th of July to our American neighbors, and stay safe, everyone. God bless. Bye,
Oh, thank you.
Angela.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.